Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another KFS off-season live stream. My name is Andrew Claudio. Some of you know me as GMAC, and I am here for a very special occasion. Not just because I get to be behind the scenes for the much anticipated off-season live stream that a lot of you found out about earlier this week and are now going to be able to send questions. Any question you want will be answered tonight. I famous last words. But I also get to hold his feet to the fire and get to see him get his held feet to the fire when he goes one-on-one with Robert Cross in the Super Chats. You know him as a recurring friend of the pod and brilliant writer who covers the Knicks for The Athletic. Fred Katz, welcome to your debut live here on Knicks Film School.
I'm only here because Robert Cross and I have exchanged passive-aggressive messaging toward each other. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to take out the passive part. I want him to, ask a question, and I just want to be able to tell him that he is not a real person. Okay. I refuse to believe Robert Cross is a real person, by the way. He is a character. He is wait. He is a character that you and Macri made up. And now that you actually have listeners, you can't give up the bit because it would prove that he was a character that you made up. There's no way that guy's a real person. And I can't wait to tell him. And I'm sure he has sent in 783 super chats already. And I can't wait to tell him, I don't care about your money. I'm not getting any of this. This is just for John and Andrew and everybody else. So I may not dignify it with an answer. We'll see how it goes.
I'm glad this is the type of journalist you are. You're exposing the AI formula that John and I created, which is Robert Cross. So we'll get to him.
You couldn't even get creative with the name Robert Cross.
Cross, pastor's son right here. Of course, it had to include a cross, and maybe John has a friend named Robert. You might be onto something there.
Yeah, John's friend Bobby, and you were like, let's just formalize it,
He's on to see. This is the type of behind-the-scenes journalism that you get.
We're gonna make him come up with ridiculous bits that he never comes off of, no matter what.
Nope. Wait for the lumberjack to show up, Fred. Don't worry. But speaking of journalism, before I hand you over to our audience, you actually did have a pretty insightful article about a week and a half ago on an incident between Obi Toppin and Tom Thibodeau after Game 4, but when the Knicks lost to the Miami Heat in the second round of the playoffs, in which, and just quoting your article, the two figures in the that you quoted went at each other. It was separated by assistant coaches and then by teammates, and it was centered around the lead-in to Obi Toppin extension talks. But of course, the tension between Tibbs and Toppin that was highlighted at the beginning of the article is what a lot of people were focused on. I just want to start with this, if we can. If you want to clarify, go ahead. But specifically to the Toppin and Tibbs back and forth, did any of that tension linger, or do you have any intel that it was squashed the next day and this is just a thing that happens often in NBA locker rooms?
It was important enough. It was remarkable enough that I deemed it worth writing. I wasn't. If it was something that I was just because there are squabbles that I find out about in the locker room. There were various ones throughout the year that I actually did find out about. And I kind of, either because I couldn't get enough detail on them, I couldn't get enough perspective on them, or because I could get enough perspective, and the perspective was just, it's a thing that happens in locker rooms. It's my duty as a reporter to figure out. To me, good reporting isn't just putting out there everything that you hear no matter what. It's actually deciding, okay, is this newsworthy? And then figuring out, okay, it's newsworthy. What's the proper context? What's the proper framing? Our duty isn't just to be true. It's also to be accurate. You know what I mean? And those are two different things. Accuracy is a level beyond what's true. And I wouldn't have written it if in my conversations with people learning about it. And I had, I mean, that wasn't like a 1 or 2 source report. I had, I think, 5 people who I spoke to about that, and everybody was on the same page about it. And so I felt really comfortable going with it because I learned about it, as you know, like I learned about it that night. I was in the locker room walking around being like, what the hell happened in here? You know, like it was, I learned about it that night. And it was a very, and you guys mentioned it. I think you mentioned it on the podcast. I don't remember if you mentioned it on the podcast or you mentioned it while you and I were talking, but you were the ones who put it together, which I forgot about at the time that I wrote the story, Obi story, because it was 6 weeks later. But that was the same night that Julius said, like, maybe Miami just wants it more than us. Did you say it on the podcast? Or
it wasn't on the pod. You and I talked when we were planning out this live stream, and I put 2 and 2 together that Obi has this incident with Tibbs. And then what we saw in the public, without knowing this yet, was Julius in a post-game press conference being like, maybe they want it more. And he got raked over the coals. And
it was like minutes after that incident.
Well, so for us, it was minutes after what a lot of Knicks fans deemed an unimpressive and uninspiring performance in Game 4. So we're like, you're like, they want it more? Like, you're the last person I hear this from. Meanwhile, he's seeing this unfold in front of him. He's separating Obi and Rick Brunson and Tibbs and dealing with this. And he's like, listen, we're fighting in the locker room over playing time in the middle of the playoffs. Maybe they want it more, you know? So it adds context to the situation now.
Yeah, that was why, like, knowing what I knew at the time, I always, I mean, even not knowing, even if I didn't know that at the time, I still would have thought it was fine that Julius said that. I appreciate it when players are honest like that, you know, like I'm never going to knock a guy as long as he's not being a jerk, which he wasn't. I'm never going to knock a guy for just being honest about how he feels about something. And I think, honestly, that was more of a kill the messenger than kill the message situation. But anyway, getting back to the Obi thing. Yeah, I mean, if I thought it was just a this happens all the time sort of event, I wouldn't have written it. I did think it was remarkable. That's why I remarked on it. I also know that Obi and Tibbs had a patch up the next day. To my knowledge, there's no, you know, sort of lingering effect. Tibbs doesn't do that stuff. You know, Tibbs is like, if you can help Tibbs win games, like that's it. Like he only cares about basketball, sometimes to a fault, and sometimes to a place that allows him to just get over that stuff like instantaneously. Like I don't think Tibbs personalized anything, to be honest. You know, Obi played in Game 5 as normal rotations. He played well. He was a big factor in that 18-2 run they had in the second quarter of that game. I don't think there was any big thing. I think it's funny that I put out that story and some of the reaction was like, oh, Fred got the okay to finally go with this because they're going to trade him on draft night. And I see all this stuff if they're going to trade Obi on draft night. And I was just like, I don't think they're trading. I mean, they might trade Obi a couple of days from now or at some point in July. That's on the table. But I was like, I don't think they're trading Obi on draft night. I don't think that's happening. And it was funny to see some of the reaction to it. So I thought it was a deal, and I wrote it mostly because I thought it was a nice microcosm. You know, I'm a storyteller at heart. And it was a fitting microcosm of just like this thing that's so obvious to all of us. Well, it's so obvious to the Knicks that in their tensest moments of the season, this is what the topic is.
Yeah, and there's a portion of the fan base, and I don't even fully discredit them, that wonder that hold it against Tibbs what Obi has been relegated to in his role. And I don't doubt Tibbs' credentials, and at least I'm not one to do so. I also do wonder what Obi could potentially do if given more creativity on the offensive end. I gather from this report and just from what we've known so far, Obi also wonders what he could potentially do if given a new role in a different system elsewhere, which is why the last question I'll ask you before I turn you over to the live chat is going to be about what you just said. That
more like the never alive chat, because Robert Cross doesn't exist.
No, that's right. On. The AI chat. You're right.
The AI chat. Yeah.
So I'll have
other people exist. Like Kevin Damashevsky. It's Damashevsky, right?
There's an N.
Danishevsky.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's a real person.
If he shows
You're not coming up with Danishevsky. That's a real person.
Chat KFS does what we tell it to. We just give us fake names for super chatters, and it just shows up. I'll hold your feet to the fire with what you just said about you could see not Obi getting traded on draft night, but you could be traded in the next couple days or maybe in July. Maybe not specifically Obi, but do you have anything that you're potentially confident in reporting, or at least I don't want to say guessing, because I know you have too much integrity to actually guess on this live stream, but anything you're comfortable saying to us about what you're hearing the Knicks may potentially do?
First of all, if I have any integrity, I plan on all of it being gone by the end of the evening. And second of all,
good plan. Yes.
Look, I think they want to add at least one piece to get better. They want to add something in the short term. I would be shocked if Josh Hart were not on the Knicks on opening day next year. And that means that they are going to have to expel somebody who is currently in their rotation and under contract from the team. It's just the math. There's the Dante DiVincenzo noise. That's everyone's heard it a million times over, right? And I think that interest is totally real. I'm far from the first person to report that, right? So let's say hypothetically they signed Dante DiVincenzo for, I don't know, close to or all of the mid-level exception. You're not giving DiVincenzo $10 million, $12 million so he can play 15 minutes. There are 0 minutes to be had in the rotation right now. Let's say you trade Obi and you get nothing back. That's only 15 minutes freed up for someone like DiVincenzo. He's taking somebody else's minutes, which means you're going to have guys getting fewer minutes, certain guys who I know certain listeners of this podcast are not going to appreciate getting fewer minutes, whether that's Quickley, whether that's RJ, whether that's Grimes. You're going to have certain guys getting fewer minutes. Or it means there's another move coming too. And it's not just Obi, or maybe the move isn't Obi and it's somebody else. Maybe it's Quickley. Maybe it's RJ. I think a lot of that stuff is firmly on the table. There are few players who could be traded away and it would really make me say, holy shit. Obviously Brunson would make me say, holy shit. I would just that's not happening. That's not going to happen. They're not trading Jalen Brunson. News that will shock nobody. I would be surprised if they traded Julius Randle. I don't think that's happening. Basically everybody else, I would be surprised if they traded Mitch, just because they really appreciate his rim protection. Taves really wants that rim protector down low in a starting center. And it would take a very specific type of trade for them to even entertain trading Mitch. It would have to be something where they either already had a trade lined up for a rim protector who was as good or better than him, or they were getting one back that was as good or better than him. And it's possible. It's possible they could get a Miles Turner trade. It's just that there are only so many trades out there that are like that. So I'd be pretty surprised on Mitch. And everybody else, I don't think anyone else would totally shock me. I really don't.
Okay. Well, I sincerely appreciate you for giving us your time tonight. I know, jokes aside, our live or AI chat appreciates you making time for us, which is why I'm officially going to turn you over, Fred Katz, to the chat and take it away. Host of a KFS live stream, Fred Katz of The Athletic.
All right. Okay. I guess I've always listened to these things. I don't really know what to do, but the first one is from Fargo Tufo. I hope I'm getting a percentage of these. It's $4.99. I'm hoping I'm getting a percentage of these super chats. So, in the new CBA, players.
So hold on. I guess we should have got over some type of.
I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I'm just reading this off and answering it, right?
So one thing that we also do, we have shied away from when.
I don't say this. I don't.
We don't say the price unless you put like $3.12 in the chat. So
right. I forgot that. Sorry, Fargo. I outed you as someone who has $4.99
and spent it on us. Exactly. Specifically to ask your question.
Yeah. It's okay. Fargo's probably a bot too. Okay. Question from Fargo Tufo. In the new CBA, players can be terminated for lack of skill. Which KFS faculty is most at risk for being terminated with cause for lack of skill? I mean, it's obviously Macri. This is Andrew's podcast. Andrew does everything. You guys have no idea. And Macri doesn't even do the scheduling. He just shows up when Andrew tells him to show up. It is unquestionably Macri. He's like the guy at the top of the pyramid scheme, and then everybody else is doing the work below, and it's all just filtering up to him, and he's taking all the $4.99 tips, and that's it. So it's unquestionably Macri. Next question. That's the easiest question I'm going to get all night. All right. All right. Robert Cross. Honestly, I'm honored. From Robert W. Cross. First time, long time, Fred. What a pleasure this is. Have you considered submitting your Money Mitch piece for a Nobel Prize? It's life-changing. Thank you. I can't believe that I came on here just destroying Robert Cross, and then he comes on and says something nice to me, and now I'm the one who looks like the asshole. It's a great... Honestly, it's an amazing strategy by him. Thank you. No, I have not submitted it for a Nobel Prize. I have not submitted it for a Pulitzer either. I'm not sure any piece with that many dick jokes in it has ever won a Pulitzer. So I'd imagine it wouldn't do so great, but I do appreciate that you appreciated it. Thank you, Robert Gross. Next one from Juanon. The orange and blue prophet Robert Randolph, my favorite, predicted 2 trades on Friday. Your thoughts? Also, who is more attached to Mitch currently, you or Tibbs? Love reading your work. Happily subscribe. Well, thank you, Juanon. Andrew, what are the 2 trades that Robert Randolph proposed?
You're going to need give me a second because I have to go to the unmute button and find that first. But I will, while you're reading the next super chat, which is of course also by Robert Cross, I will get that information for you. Don't worry.
Okay. So here's another Robert Cross one. First time, long time, Fred. What do you think John does in the woods? Also, perhaps related to what do you attribute your natural chemistry with It's Your Boy John? What do I think John does in the woods? I think John just does woodsman type stuff. I imagine that he has to burrow for warmth, tries to find sticks. I imagine he has some way of contacting Andrew so Andrew can come out to set fires for him, because once again, John doesn't really have any skills to be able to take care of that. He probably finds some I imagine John honestly just like violently attacking rabbits, eating the insides, and then using their skin to stay warm. That's honestly what I imagine. And he doesn't use utensils or anything. He's just going at it. He's not cooking them because he doesn't know how to make a fire, and he's just going at it. I don't know. John Macri is a great podcaster, and he's very easy to podcast with. So I would say that the chemistry is all his. I know you listen to every episode of this podcast probably, so you should know he has great chemistry with everybody he podcasts with. So it's probably something to do with that.
So apologies for interrupting your Macri.
No, perfect timing.
Macri compliment parade, but I do not see a single Robert Randolph projected trade. That doesn't mean they don't always show up.
Maybe he deleted them.
Maybe, potentially.
Maybe he predicted them and they didn't happen. They deleted.
Chat, help me out. And if Robert Randolph predicted trades today, please tell me, because I know over the years he's predicted a thing or two, and I got to a certain point where I was like, all right, I don't need you to predict things in my life anymore. So I'll just leave it at that. Please help me out, live chat. But we move on to the next super chatter, Fred Katz of the Athletic.
From Fred Katz. Can I say the price for this one?
This one you can, yes.
Okay, yeah. So this one's from Fred Katz for $3.15, and it's honestly a really good request. It just says, "Can you make sure this money goes to Fred, not John?" I agree. It's a good sentiment. We can go to the next one.
So apparently, the chat, Juanon's in the chat now saying that apparently he said RJ's gone, and that OG Anunoby will get traded, and that Donovan Mitchell will get traded.
Okay, so RJ is gone in an OG trade, or he's just gone?
So the tweet that I think is being referenced is that he tweeted out, it was nice while it lasted, RJ, it looks like. Was great having RJ here is the tweet he sent 5 hours ago.
Was great having RJ here.
Yes.
Maybe he hosted him for a Shabbat dinner.
You know what? Not gonna completely rule it out,
And look, it's possible they trade RJ. I don't think Robert Randolph has it this in advance. I think it's totally possible they trade RJ. Look, we talk so often about how they need shooting. Mm-hmm. And in the regular season, the offense functioned in spite of the three-point shooting because they had really good shot selection. And Tibbs constantly says, this is his messaging to the team, the goal is to be high volume from three at least league average percentage. That's the goal. They did not get to league average percentage because they got it to a really, really slow start from three where they were like very close to last in the league for a long portion of the beginning part of the season. But if you look after a certain date, and it's been a couple months since I looked at the numbers, but it's over the last 50 games or something like that, they were basically league average percentage wise from three. They were high volume. They were top 10 in the league in attempts. And that's the goal that they wanted to be. And when you have a team like that also gets to the free throw line a lot, and that is really good at these sneaky sorts of plays and has, like the Brunson's floaters and all that Quickleys and all that kind of stuff. And then you also have the most ridiculous offensive rebounding center in the Eastern Conference in Mitchell Robinson. And by the way, it's not just him. Hartenstein is an excellent offensive rebounder. Josh Hart is an excellent offensive rebounder. Quickley is a good rebounder for a guard. It's a bunch of guys. They were the best offensive rebounding team in the league this year of any team that was responsible about offensive rebounding. Houston technically had a better offensive rebound rate. The only reason Houston had a better offensive rebound rate is because all five players just chased after the ball like they were dogs and someone threw a tennis ball. Mm-hmm. And they just, it's as if they chased after the ball. It's as if they were being coached to say, okay, not only are we not going to run back in transition, we're actually going to run the opposite way. It was as if they were just taking the really long way, just around the earth, and just coming back the other way, and they'd be back by time. It was incredible watching Houston. So I like to say the Knicks were the best offensive rebounding team of any team that actually offensive rebounded responsibly. And it worked in the regular season. And then we saw what happened in the Miami series. And Miami was clogging the paint and helping off of their shooters and making sure that the guys who they were fine taking threes were taking the threes. And it didn't work. And Brunson didn't have space. And he was still really, really, really good. But he probably could have been even better because his job was ridiculously difficult. And we all agree they need shooting. Maybe not for the regular season because we saw them finish tied for third in the league in points per possession in spite of not having that three-point shooting. But they sure as hell need it when it comes to a playoff series against a really good, really well-coached team, which if you plan on going deep in the playoffs, there will be at least one, probably multiple of those. And they know it internally. They're not delusional about this. They know they need shooting. But the problem is they're going to need shooting in the most important moments. And right now, in your most important moments with the team currently constructed, you're going to have at least three non-shooters on the floor. Three guys, I shouldn't say three non-shooters, at least three guys who defenses feel comfortable helping off of from the three-point arc. Because you're going to have Julius out there, who's not a non-shooter, who's in the three-point contest. But he is somebody who defenses feel comfortable helping off of. You're going to have Mitch, who camps out in the paint. And you're going to have RJ. And if you don't have RJ, you're probably going to have Josh Hart. And there's a pretty good chance in the most important moments you're going to have those guys. And it's probably more often than not going to be RJ. And then the question becomes, okay, does going out and getting some bench guy who's not going to close for the mid-level actually change your shooting, change your spacing in a meaningful way if it doesn't change it in the meaningful moments? And that is what you have to get at. So if they really truly deem spacing the issue, then of that trio of Mitch, RJ, and Julius, they got to make a choice. At least one of those guys has to be, you have to strongly consider moving on from one of those guys. And I'm pretty confident, knowing how thoughtful and measured Robert Randolph is, I'm pretty confident that's what he meant by that.
100%.
For sure.
A guy you didn't say just now was Immanuel Quickley. That could potentially be one of the people closing, but also
right,
because he's extension eligible, could be one of the guys that some of us have theorized might get moved, which is why your next question from JG is centered around Immanuel Quickley.
All right, from JG. Question, which is more likely to happen this season? IQ dealt now, IQ dealt mid-season, IQ stays with the team all season. I think the least likely would be him getting dealt mid-season, because I don't really see a world where they have him going into the season and it comes to the deadline and he's not just like too important to their current prospects to trade. I do think there's a world where he gets traded this season. I do think there's a world where he gets traded for like a veteran or something, like a really good veteran. But it would have to be the right trade. I don't think the Knicks are actively trying to trade him. I do know they spoke to at least one team about Quickley, but it was I want to make sure I phrase this in the best way possible because I haven't written this or said this elsewhere. They've spoken to at least one team about Quickley, but I do know the player that they were discussing, they weren't particularly close. And the player they were discussing acquiring for Quickley was a really good player in his prime. So I don't think it's a situation where it's like they're trying to trade Quickley. I think they think very highly of Quickley, and they thought, well, if we want a really good player in his prime, you can't just give up peanuts. And I think they thought maybe Quickley is the guy because this other team liked Quickley a lot, and they weren't close and nothing materialized. Teams talk about that kind of stuff all the time. It's not a huge deal to me. And that's the only time I've really heard about them talking Quickley stuff. I think it's possible he gets traded this offseason. I'm going to say the most likely is that he stays with them, but I wouldn't bet my life that he's not going anywhere. If I had to rank them, I would say that he's more likely to stay with them this summer than Obi is. Like, I would say Obi is definitely more likely to get dealt than Quickley is. Next one from Jessica Elsner. Make sure we only refer to these as Super Katz chats. Fred, how did it feel to write he drained 40% of his deep balls this season? I'll tell you what, however good it felt to write, I'm sure whoever it was who drained 40% of deep balls, it felt better to drain the deep balls. That's got to be for sure. We're not Andrew flashes onto the camera. We're not in innuendo anymore. We've walked right past innuendo and we're just saying it all out loud. Andrew, I think we're ready for the next super chat though. Oh, from Fred Katz for $4.91. When is Macri coming back? This guy blows. Well, that's why. He's making deep balls jokes. Andrew, am I allowed to make deep balls jokes?
I'm sure you've listened to the show before and heard.
That's true.
Specifically during, Macri reading NBA Youngboy lyrics and us during the NBA draft commenting on
and
Grady
and
Dick.
also
Yeah.
the Manscaped ads.
Like, not for nothing. Yeah, I literally got paid to make balls jokes here on the show.
Grady Dick has got to get a Manscaped.
He does
thing, right?
Yes, he does. If
Like-
Orlando, if you don't have Grady Dick reading, doing Manscaped commercials during promos during the halftime,
right? He's got to come on, and the tagline has to be: if you want to have a grade A dick, talk to Grady Dick.
The best was the Orlando Sentinel that tweeted out a picture of Grady Dick, and on top of the picture it said big, and on the bottom of the picture it said energy.
Oh no, it was the newspaper. I think it was the student paper at University of Kansas.
Oh, it was. Oh, I thought it was okay, so it was his college paper, which even better.
Yeah. That was great.
This is this is what you came for, everybody. Next up, one of your colleagues.
Here's Chris. Hey Fred, hate your work, naturally. What's something you learned covering another team that stuck with you in NYC? Chris coming in with the journalism questions. Okay. Andrew, should I get deep? Should I get really deep right now? I'm going to get deep. I learned that basketball decision-making has as much to do with ego as it does to do with intelligence. I used to see guys, as like a fan or growing up or whatever, I used to see guys who just like make terrible passes, reckless plays, whatever, and think that guy makes that decision because he has low basketball IQ. And it's kind of what we all think. And I realized the guy who really taught me this was John Wall, where I used to go to John Wall. I got to a point when I was covering the Wizards where I'd go to John Wall's locker like before like almost every game. And we would just chat about basketball and the NBA because I loved talking basketball with John Wall because the dude's basketball IQ is obscene. And he'd go out in the court and the Wizards would be down 2 with 19 seconds left. And he would take some 17-footer when he shot 32% from that range and miss it. And if you ask him, hey, John, there's a 32% shooter who just took a shot with the team down 2 with 19 seconds left on the clock. What do you think of that shot? He would tell you that's not a good shot. But I think the reason John takes those shots is because he's so confident in himself that he says, yeah, but I'm not. I make every shot that I take. And it really stuck with me because there were so many moments where I see guys make certain decisions and do things. And I just think like, he just thinks he's John Wall and he can do it. Or he just thinks he's fill in the blank and he can do it. I'm much less judgmental, not just because of that kind of stuff, but with a lot of other things. Like I also like when you're covering the league, and this is kind of the greater point on it, I guess, you kind of start to know that there's so many more things that you don't know than you realized. Like we were talking about, for example, like the Julius Randle comment about maybe they just wanted it more. Like I understood why fans were upset about that. But the fact that it comes minutes after that whole thing with Obi goes down in the locker room, and he's one of the people who's like, trying to calm down the situation. And then he comes out, and that's obviously a very highly emotional situation for everybody involved. And then he comes out and he has to do media. I'm a reporter, and I don't think he should have just ducked media that night. But I understand that that's a tough situation for a person to be in. Then he comes out, he says, maybe they just wanted it more. But to the outside, it just looks like he came out and said, maybe they just wanted it more. Right. So like, I think there's just so much that we don't know on the outside that it makes me generally less judgmental of the really bad stuff, but also I think sometimes less like profusely praiseful of the really good stuff too. All right. Ray Marcano. Fred and Andrew, I'm in Kentucky buying a barrel of bourbon. Please don't die, Ray. Happy to send you some for all you do, and John. If no more changes, what's the Knicks record this season? All right. I'll take the bourbon. Sounds wonderful. A barrel sounds a little over the top. What's the Knicks record this season? If nothing else changes. So if they just run it back and it's the same 9-man rotation. I mean, I think Grimes will get better. I don't think RJ will be any worse. He'll probably get better. I don't think Quickley will be any worse. He'll probably get better. I think Obi probably, even if he does get better, if he's going to play that same role, not sure how much it impacts them. I think the defense will be better with Josh Hart there. Yeah, you know what? Screw it. Robert Cross, 53 wins. I think I'd put him at like 48, 49, something like that. I think that sounds about right. 48, 49. But I also don't think it's going to be exactly the same. Like even if there aren't massive changes to the core, like there will be some change on the periphery. I don't think they're just running it back like 100% the same. From Fargo Tufo. Why did Macri tattoo Fred on his cheek face? And Andrew, is this something that I'm missing?
So this is in reference to Zion Williamson and some recent tattoos that someone that someone in his life recently got on their face. So
was that real? That wasn't photoshopped?
I gotta be totally honest with you. I started down the path of the rabbit hole into that story and decided quickly, like, oh, this is I got enough and didn't get as far as to keep up with the story. So I usually think half the stuff on the internet isn't true, but that also means half the stuff on the internet is. So I have no idea how to judge it completely.
I mean, I guess if this is a reference to that, then the answer would be because I'm having a kid with somebody else. Right?
Of course.
I haven't really followed I'll be honest, I think I have followed the Zion stuff in general less than anyone else in the NBA world. I couldn't even really tell you the details of it. I just don't care. I care so much more about how good Zion is in crunch time. Like, I just don't care. I don't care to know his personal life. I just don't care.
Can I ask a follow-up? In the NBA circles that you travel in and converse in and snoop around in, do stories like this that tend to end up more gossip column-y, which I know isn't a word, but I'll just make it. But like, do those come up the way they do for us on like Twitter Spaces and whatnot?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I've heard like hilarious gossipy stories about players that I won't report.
Right. Right.
I've had players who trust me because they know I'm not going to put it out there, tell me like wild stories. And they're just like, you obviously can't write this. And then I'm like, yeah, no problem. Let me hear the story. And they tell me, and it's a hilarious story. And then you move on. I mean, look, these are very, very well off, often single men in their 20s who can do very well if they please to. So
can do what they want if they please to. Yes,
there is a lot of gossip that I have heard over the years.
Okay,
but I'm not going to tell any of it here.
Have you spoken to your colleagues in New Orleans about like how do they have to cover this a certain way, or do they have to cover it at all?
Never even mentioned it to them.
Okay,
I have no idea. I'm not kidding. Like I have not even thought about this sign. Like I haven't followed it. Sometimes stuff about it pops up on my timeline. I saw those pictures. I just don't. Maybe I'm just too old now. I just don't care.
This is now the second live stream this week that this Zion story has come up, and we haven't completely given context. I'm telling you, folks, I don't know the story enough.
I couldn't give context if I wanted to.
No. I'm not saying it's your fault. Benji was even worse at explaining what the story was.
Because you've got like the two biggest basketball nerds ever that you're talking about this with. Talk about this with like, like someone who like, are there two people on earth who care more about just like wanting to discuss like help side defense than me and Benji.
Yeah.
You know, like,
and DJ Zulo for that matter. Yeah.
Yes.
The two of them
there
the
you
other
go.
night. Yeah.
You're picking the worst people.
All right. So you should have asked probably Chris last night. The kids probably know, like the youth of America probably know more about stuff like this. So
Chris would know. Another one from Ray. How does it feel to be loved by Knicks fans? I'll let you know when I find someone who is. But I'll let you know. I'll ask Carmelo Anthony that. And then I'll let you know on that. I don't know. Am I loved by Knicks fans? I don't think most Knicks fans know who I am. We can go to the next one. Is that true?
You're on a Knicks live stream that a lot of people are watching and are getting donations specifically saying how much they appreciate your work. I think you're loved by Knicks fans.
But half of them are just
so Ray should have specified AI Knicks fans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like you guys are way more loved by Knicks fans than I am.
You're in our circle. One of us.
I think I'm KFS adjacent.
We'll take it. You're an adjunct. You're an adjunct faculty, whatever you want to call it, of Knicks Film School. Fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you guys are way more loved. From Robert Cross, this donation is for you, Fred. You'll need the monies after the young upstart Chris Persanian graduates college and takes your job. Hopefully then he'll be able to move out of his mom's basement. Hashtag 53 wins. I should note that I think actually on the previous Robert Cross ones, I think I forgot to read hashtag 53 wins on the other one, which I don't know how I forgot to read them. Thank you, Robert. That's very, very nice of you. And that's also a very good and well-deserved burn. Well done. Next one from Duran Visual Variant. Curious about chemistry since you're around the team. Wondered what are the cliques on the Knicks? Who hangs out with who really gets along off the court? Who are just work friends? That's a good question. I know Obi and Quick are pretty good buddies. McBride and Quentin Grimes get along really well. I think the young guys kind of tend to get along pretty well. Mitch and Hartenstein are like really good friends. They're like Beavis and Butthead. They're totally ridiculous together, those two. And like they try to get Jericho in on their thing, but Jericho's just so quiet and just so keeps to himself that they try to get Jericho in on the thing because he's the other center. But Mitch and Hartenstein are like really close. Off the top of my head, those are some of the really close friendships. RJ gets along really well with Mitch, gets along really well with Obi. Off the top of my head, those are some of them right there. From Matt Smith. Fred, please give me reassurance that the Knicks starting center will not be nicknamed for an animal. Who is a big name you don't think is being talked about enough? Is Mitchell Robinson being nicknamed for an animal? Did I miss this too? Maybe I just don't cover the Knicks well anymore because I don't know any of this stuff. Andrew, can you help me out here?
I'll dig around. I'll ask the chat to clarify, but I'll dig.
Do you
around.
know what he's referring to?
Oh, Cat.
Oh, Cat. I was like, what is Mitchell Robinson's nickname?
No. So that he's saying reassure him that the Knicks will not trade for Cat. There you go.
Reassure him. I can't reassure him that the Knicks won't trade for Cat. Yeah, sorry, Matt. I can't reassure you the Knicks won't trade for Cat. Look, if I had to set the odds on the Knicks will trade for Cat or they won't trade for Cat, I would say it's definitely more likely that they won't trade for Cat. What I've heard from like kind of out of Minnesota is that it used to be, so when Minnesota was talking to other teams on the trade market, it was like Anthony Edwards, no go, Rudy Gobert, no go, Cat, no go, and Jaden McDaniels, no go. And it was like, you can't talk to them about those guys. And from what I've heard, the way that they're kind of positioning when they talk to other teams now is like, if you mention Ants, hang it up, done. Like there's no offer you could even make for him because when you're a third of the way into talking, the phone is going to be hung up. And those other three guys, Cat, Gobert, and McDaniels, like they're not trying to trade them at all. They're not seeking out trades for them, but they have positioned Ant as like the we're not trading him guy. And that's the kind of the first time they've signaled a little bit of a separation between Ant and the rest of the guys. So I think if you make a really great offer for Cat, and this is my opinion, this part is my opinion based on the knowledge that I just told you guys. I think my personal belief, if you make a really strong offer for Cat, I don't think Minnesota is going to just like hang up on you and tell you to go screw yourself. It's not happening. But I also don't think Minnesota is even considering an offer for Cat unless it's a ridiculously strong offer. I know the connections. He's represented by CAA. Leon Rose used to be his agent. At this point, that's a prerequisite for coming to the Knicks, right? It's a prerequisite for being on the superstar list. I wrote this week, I wouldn't give up a ton for him if I were the Knicks. I don't think he's the ideal fit, like contract aside. It's just if you've got him and Brunson, I would just have nightmares of those two guys in a playoff series of them just getting killed in pick and rolls over and over and over again. So, I mean, I wouldn't do it. I don't think they've been saving up all their chips to just trade a ton of picks and good young players for Cat. But I'm not saying it's a 0% chance. Like, certainly the talk all around the league all year, and this is not me reporting according to sources. I'm making very clear that like the NBA is like high school and there's so much gossip, just endless amounts of gossip. And other teams always want to talk about other teams. And they're always just like, so Knicks are getting Cat. That seems like a done deal. And that's not a source. A source is someone who has direct knowledge of that the Knicks are getting whomever they're getting. A source is somebody who is there, or at least privy to the conversation firsthand, depending on the person. Almost always it's somebody who is there when the thing goes down, or like, you know, has direct proof of the thing going down. That's a source, you know. This is not a source. This is just like fill in the blank person who works for the Shanghai Sharks who's like, yeah, Knicks are getting Cat. That's what I heard from a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, you know? And so everyone around the league all year was like, yeah, Knicks are going to get Cat this summer. That was all thing. And it's because they're putting the obvious breadcrumbs together that everybody assumes that whenever they trade for the star, it's going to be a CAA guy, and Cat's a CAA guy. And, you know, Minnesota fell apart this year. But I think I can't assure you it's not happening, but I also can tell you I think it's more likely than not that he's not coming to New York.
So it's not as obvious as where we were exactly a year ago that the breadcrumbs were pointing to Leon Rose, whose godson was a restricted free agent, or an upcoming restricted free agent, whose son was the agent of said restricted free agent, and then whose head coach just hired the father of said restricted free agent to join the team. It's not as blatant as that, but the breadcrumbs do exist, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, the breadcrumbs aren't nearly as strong. Those weren't even
those are on fire.
Those weren't even breadcrumbs.
Those are billboards.
But like those weren't even breadcrumbs. Like those things were so hot they were just toast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they were. That was so obvious. Mm-hmm. You know, like.
Well, thankfully they followed league rules and waited until the tampering period officially ended, and they signed him an hour afterwards. We're of course talking about Jalen Brunson, and Jalen Brunson this season was outstanding, and one might even say, Fred, that he was more than meets the eye. And we are going to take a quick break to hear from our friends at Oakley, and specifically from our good friend who found his way back from the wilderness, Fred, to tell us why Jalen Brunson this past season, his first year in New York, was more than meets the eye.
Hey, what's up? Jonathan Macri here with our good friends at Oakley to tell you why Jalen Brunson's incredible first season in New York was more than meets the eye. Is it that Brunson became the first point guard in Knicks history to average at least 24 points a game? Is it that he became just the second player in NBA history to average at least 24 points, 6 assists, and under 2.5 turnovers? No and no. It's that he did both of those things all while playing on a below-market contract that will become even more valuable under the new collective bargaining agreement. So yes, we should all be very thankful that the Mavericks had to find out the hard way that Jalen Brunson is more than meets the eye.
Next up.
We're back.
Yes, we're back.
Robert Cross. Robert Cross is more than meets the eye too. It's actually all that meets the eye. Or I guess maybe he doesn't meet the eye at all because he's not real. He's just an AI bot. He's all that meets the AI. There it is. That's the one.
Well done.
That's the one. From Robert Cross. This is for the legend of GMAC. Any truth to the rumor that the KFS crew will do the cha-cha-cha at your wedding for an Oakley spot? Hashtag 53 wins.
I guess you'll just have to find out whenever that happens, Robert, whenever my wedding occurs, and you find out whoever from the KFS crew attends and what they dance to at said wedding, Robert. That's all. Go ahead.
Robert, I can tell you that I do know that about halfway through Andrew's vows, he is going to do a Manscaped read. It's going to be great.
Oh, man.
I vow to always trim my deep balls at 40%.
Yes. Good Lord. We're off the rails officially, friend. Anyway.
All right. From Frank Sound. Tipping in euros. We've gone international. Grimes is always the one fans forget about. It's crazy, in my opinion. He's a damn good young player. How do the Knicks view him? Your opinion. I enjoy your work. Well, thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. I agree with you. I think he's a damn good young player as well. And I think the Knicks agree that he's a damn good young player. Tibbs is a huge Grimes guy. Huge Grimes supporter. The thing with the Knicks that's always a little difficult to figure out is they have so many voices in their front office. And there's always such a fine line between collaboration and just kind of like opinion overload. And I think at times there is opinion overload in that front office. And so it's sometimes a little bit difficult to figure out like, okay, this person believes this. This person wants this to happen. And I know that for sure. And this person's important. And I know another person who's important also wants the same thing. But does that, most organizations, that means the Knicks want that? Does that mean that most organizations, that means the team wants that? Does that mean the Knicks want that? Or is there somebody who's slightly more important who actually doesn't? Or is there somebody who's less important but has Dolan's ear more, who doesn't want it? It's a very convoluted process trying to figure stuff out with the organization. But what I can say is that the front office people are generally, I don't think there's a person in that organization who doesn't think Grimes is going to be a really good complementary player. And I think there are some people who might be a little higher than others. But I don't think there's anyone in that organization who's like out on him. Whereas with RJ, for example, I think there are some people who think very highly of his prospects. And then it's kind of like, you know, what it is in the fan base too. And then there's some people who just like see the inefficiency and see the, you know, the problems finishing around the rim, the problems with the jump shot, the, you know, the inconsistent ability to find the right pass and that kind of stuff. Although he was much better in the playoffs with that, and they worry. With Grimes, I can say Tibbs is huge on Grimes. Tibbs, if he wasn't the principal reason they drafted Grimes, he was damn close to it. I'll tell you that much. He was pushing Grimes hard in the draft process. He wanted Grimes really bad. Same thing with Miles McBride. So Tibbs loves Grimes. Huge on Grimes. From Alex Goldberg, are there any teams in the league interested in Julius? Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't think the Knicks are trying to trade him, but Yeah, there are probably teams that would take Julius. This isn't last summer, you know? This isn't last summer when he was coming off of that disastrous season and the extension was about to kick in. Like, he's coming off an all NBA season. And I get it. I saw the playoffs too. I did. But he's coming off an all NBA season for the second time in 3 years. There are very few players who can say that they've done that in their career. He's still 28 years old. Yes, there are teams that would be interested in Julius. Now, are there teams that would be interested in Julius in a way that it would help the Knicks and the Knicks would be interested in trading him? I think that's a little more complicated because I don't see the Knicks trading Randall unless it's a way to make them like definitively better. That's the only way I see it. Like if like there's some superstar who's available and instead of trying to pair him with Randall, they think it's, a bad fit with Randall or something like that. But this guy's just a massive superstar. And so they try to include him in the trade. Maybe that's one of the rare scenarios where they do it. But I don't see them actively trying to trade Randall. And I can't really envision a realistic trade that could come their way that isn't a massive superstar one in which they would actually have the desire to trade him because he is important for them. And he was great during the regular season in spite of his flaws, in spite of the defensive stuff, in spite of the playoffs. Like the contract is reasonable too. Like it is. I mean, he's $28 million next year. Like that's fine. It's totally fine. The cap's going to be $132 million. Like it's way less than what a max would be. It's crazy that 28 million is fine. I still haven't wrapped my head around that, but it is. That's totally fine for a guy of his caliber. So yeah, teams will be interested. From Ryan Huang, love your work, Fred. Thank you, Ryan. Did you know that Mariah Mills has more Zion tweets, 205 plus, than Zion has played games in the NBA, 114? Anyways, who will be the Knicks' top 5 players at the end of next season? I did not know that. It's a great stat. I don't really know what it means, but it's a wonderful stat, and I'm happy that somebody took the time to figure that out and count it up. Top 5 players for the Knicks at the end of next season. I mean, Andrew, come on over.
What's up?
Let's talk through this.
Let's do it. I think Jalen Brunson.
Like this is a good talk through moment.
Let's do it. Jalen Brunson's your easy number 1.
Jalen Brunson's your easy number 1. I think Julius will still be there. So Julius. The question is, will Quickley be there? Will RJ be there? Will Josh Hart be there? I mean, Mitch was one of their 5 most important players this year, and I think he'll be there. So I'm going to say Mitch. And then the question is, who's still there? I think Grimes is bound for like a real leap. Like I'm not saying like a Desmond Bain leap, but I think Grimes is bound for this dude can give you 28 minutes every night and his defense hits another level and he's really good against small guards. And I'm just waiting for that dude to shoot 40 from 3. Like I'm just waiting on it. I think he's a really quick decision maker. I'm going to put Grimes in there. And then it kind of comes down to Quickley or Josh Hart or player X.
Or RJ.
Oh, or RJ. Jesus, or RJ.
Dean Wade strikes again.
I'm going to say, for the sake of this question, because it's so boring to say 5 guys who are on the team right now, I'm going to say the number 5. Tell me if this is a cop-out. If it's a cop-out, I'll go with another answer. 5 is whoever, like they're going to trade. I shouldn't say it so definitively because I'm on a podcast, but pretty realistic chance they trade at least one of RJ, Quickley, Obi, right? I'm going to say number 5 is whoever they get back in that deal.
Who?
I have to say who?
That's a cop out. I can't let you just say player X. You got to say a name.
OG Anunoby.
Okay.
Now everyone's going to be like, Frank Katz said they're getting OG Anunoby.
Because you did.
No, I didn't.
Okay. I'm actually going to skip
didn't.
down to a question. I'm not.
To
I
be
apologize,
clear,
Kat.
wait.
Go ahead,
Just to be clear, because aggregators exist, I have zero sources saying the Knicks are getting OG Anunoby. But I do know for sure that they were very interested in OG Anunoby leading into this past trade deadline.
How interesting?
That they're very. There were calls, there were discussions. There were, I don't know. It depends on how you define offer. You know, it's always murky, but there were discussions. There were pieces that would be going to Toronto discussed and OG that would be going to New York discussed, but I don't think it was ever like close because Toronto just didn't want to trade him. But now he's expiring. And with the news of today, you know, he left Clutch because he was with Omar Wilkes previously with Clutch, and Omar Wilkes left Clutch and OG left Clutch and announced today that he signed with CAA. The mind can only wander. So I have zero sources, to be clear, that say the Knicks are trying to trade for OG. But look, they can make a compelling offer, honestly, for Anunoby that includes 0 players. They could do Fournier and a bunch of draft picks.
You think
salaries
Toronto would just go for the straight salary dump?
It depends on the direction Toronto wants to go in. You know, if Toronto is trading, I mean, you could also do it for RJ. The money works on RJ. That's one thing that teams are going to have to be really careful about is you can now hard cap yourself with a trade. And I haven't seen anyone talk about this, but you can hard cap yourself with a trade now. And okay, because the way it's phrased is if you're over the first apron, you can only match up to 110% on trades, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that means if you do a trade with salary matching that's over 110%, then you can't go over the first apron.
Right.
The inverse is true too. So you're hard capped at the first apron. If you make a trade with just like normal salary matching. So you basically have to take back less salary or barely more salary or identical money. So if I'm a team like the Knicks and I really don't want to be hard capped, I would, whatever trades that I'm making this summer, unless of course you're using the MLE and you're going to hard cap yourself anyway. If I'm the Knicks, I was going to write a little thing on this I'm putting out a free agency preview at some point tomorrow. And I'm going to have a little something on this in there.
If you're the Knicks.
Yeah, if I'm the Knicks, unless of course they just use the MLE, because if they use the non-taxpayer MLE, they're hard capped anyway. I'm like fine. I'm just not taking in more than 100%, 110% on trades this summer. Like I'm just finding ways not to do it because I don't want to be hard capped. What I don't want is to be like $4 million below the hard cap, and then Joel Embiid becomes available. And he's like, I only want to go to New York. And, you know, taking him in would add $5 million. So you can't trade for Joel Embiid with the deal that both teams want to do. So now the Knicks have to add more salary to the deal. And the only way to make it work is like you have to put Grimes in. He's the only player that makes sense financially. And now you're just like either letting the deal die or you're trading Embiid or you're letting a deal die because you hard capped yourself, or you're, you know, throwing in a young player who you don't want to trade, but you have to for financial reasons, you know? So
I'm going to add a question in just because Jason M asked, it's later on, but he did ask CAA versus Clutch, OG Anunoby, Levine, any insights? I guess as part of the question, the discussions that were had between the Knicks and Toronto was a Canadian legend potentially for the Canadian national team as an RJ Barrett. Was he mentioned in these talks? Do you have any insight there?
I can't say definitively that he wasn't.
Okay.
But every single proposal that I heard did not involve him.
Okay.
It was really just like pick laden stuff.
So it was like
like 40,
we'll give you a ton of picks.
48-ish in picks. Like it wasn't
Okay.
It wasn't anyone from the rotation.
So that's what you're saying, is that it's like the guys we benched plus picks is what we'd offer for Anunoby. And if Toronto was
something
willing
like
to
that.
Tear it down like that, they might have jumped at it.
Somehow. Right. But Toronto ended up going the other direction, right? Like they ended up trading for Jakob Poeltl.
Right.
And they traded a draft pick and protected it top 6 for a few years. So like, we'll see what they do. I think a lot of people in the league are waiting to see what Toronto does. I mean, one big thing there is like Pascal Siakam's coming up soon also, but it sounds like Siakam really wants to resign. He loves it there, it sounds like. So what are they going to decide to do with Siakam? Do they just want to hold on to him? Do they think even though he wants to resign, it's best for the organization to break it down? You know, I don't know what Toronto's going to decide to do. Well, I mean, how they handle the Fred VanVleet free agency situation will be a little bit of a tell, I guess. If they like pay Fred VanVleet tons of money or something like that, it's a little bit of a tell. But you know, I don't think they're going to like pay Fred VanVleet a ton of money and then trade OG Anunoby unless they're getting back somebody who they think is really good. So we'll see. From Jason M, CAA versus Clutch, OG Anunoby, Levine, any insights? So Anunoby we discussed. Levine, I assume this is a reference to Stephen Bondi's report that Levine's reps don't want him with the Knicks. I have some insights. I'll say that the CAA Clutch thing has been a thing for a little while. Like Leon Rose used to rep LeBron, right? And then LeBron left and went to Clutch, and that was totally a thing. And so it's not even just like Knicks versus CAA. I think I saw the Bondi report come out, and I think the first place that people's mind go is, oh, the Knicks didn't play Cam Reddish. And so Clutch was pissed. And I don't think it's that shallow. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Clutch was happy about that. But the guy who was Cam Reddish's agent at the time, Omar Wilkes, who I mentioned earlier, who was, kind of their top agent and repped a ton of big time guys, like he's not even at Clutch anymore. So I think it goes a lot deeper than that. And quite frankly, one thing that I can say, and I've written about this, is that because the Knicks are so tied into CAA, Leon Rose came from CAA. Worldwide West came from CAA. Isaiah Hartenstein switched representations in the middle of his season with the Clippers, then goes to the Knicks, right? Jalen Brunson has all the ties, goes to the Knicks. Tibbs is CAA, and the Knicks don't even really have a coaching search, right? It's just like you're going and getting Tibbs. A number of other guys on the roster, CAA. Josh Hart is CAA. Julius Randle is CAA. All the guys who they've kind of targeted is like, oh, these could be the stars, whether it's that they go get, whether it's Donovan Mitchell or Cat or Devin Booker, all the names you hear, like those are the CAA names. And I will say that there are definitely agents in existence. And I'm not saying this about Clutch specifically, because I don't need to out any particular person about it, but it's just relevant to this topic. Like there are agents in existence who worry about their clients going to the Knicks because they're worried that them going to the Knicks is going to kind of be a death sentence for their relationship with that client. That client is either A, not going to get the favor that he would get with the organization if he were a CAA guy, or B, which is kind of tied to A, he's going to worry that client is going to leave him and go sign with CAA once he's with the Knicks. I don't know if that's, I understand why agents think that way. I think there are certain times where they're being a little bit sensationalist, but it's unquestionably a thing that there are it's not like one agent has told me that. I've had a number of agents tell me that stuff, that they feel like they kind of have to be looking over their shoulder when they're with the Knicks, because the Knicks tie-ins with CAA are greater than the most organizations tie-ins with a particular agency. From Sam Garcia's dad. There's Sam Garcia's dad. I've been waiting for a Sam Garcia family member to weigh in. What's the better move for the Knicks? Trade for Dean Wade or Cheddar Assman? Seriously, do you think the Knicks trade for a star this summer? If so, who? Well, first of all, it's Dean Wade. Like, come on. The guy does everything. And secondly, it's hard to say if I think they're going to. I think here's what I know. And here's what they have certainly signaled to teams that are out there. They have signaled to teams that are out there that if like a dude becomes available, they're going to be really aggressive. And the impression that I've got is like, that's for real. Like if a real dude becomes available, they're on it. I don't think they thought Bradley Beal was that real dude. They were interested. They made it clear leading up to his availability that they were interested. They'd consider it. Ultimately, they decided not to do it. I think it was the right decision. Also, wasn't really their choice. Like he wasn't on the Beal list. He wasn't one of the teams. And ultimately the Beal list really just became one team because he wanted to go to Phoenix, and that's where he went, and he had no trade clause. So that's all that mattered. I will say, if someone becomes available, I think will be one of the most aggressive, if not the most aggressive teams out there. I honestly am not sure who the guy is. Andrew, should we just reel some off? Like
Paul George.
I wrote this week. Screw Paul George's injury history. Paul George would be great.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be great for them. He'd be awesome for them. He is the perfect basketball fit.
Basketball fit, yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
In every way. On both sides of the floor. He's the perfect personality too, by the way. And he likes Tibbs.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he knows Tibbs from Team USA, and he likes Tibbs.
The podcast he did with Julie is fully emphasized that. I covered. There would be no issue with the head coach already.
Yeah, I covered Paul in Oklahoma City. Yeah. Hardworking dude, does not play with any ego. Would not care less about having it be Jalen Brunson's team. Moves off the ball in every way you would want. And he does it improvisationally, not just off of set plays. I think he would add a ton of movement to their offense. He's great running off of pin downs. He's great at back cutting when somebody falls asleep. He's great at running around a pin down, getting trapped off the pin down, and then back cutting the trap and getting a layup or a dunk out of it. He moves beautifully. He is an elite 3-point shooter.
Can I ask a follow-up? Do you think the Knicks, if like in this scenario where they do make a Paul George trade, do you think they would load manage? The way it seems he's been needed to be load managed over his first couple of years. Now, I don't know if there's some chicanery with the Clippers, but I don't think there's 75 Paul George games available next season. Do you think they would, like, I know it's against Tibbs' religion, but they would load manage him to an extent, which if you keep your assets or keep some of your depth, that opens playing time for like Quickley to get 25 starts as a result.
You better.
You think they should, but they've been a team that doesn't. So
yeah, but they've also been a team that has a reputation for having a really good medical staff. People around the league always speak so highly of their medical staff. They don't do it, but they've also been like one of the healthiest teams in the league for a long time. So I would have faith they would handle that situation well. PG doesn't really play defensively, by the way. Dude's phenomenal guarding off the ball. He walls off the entire weak side of the court. He is incredible at helping into the lane and recovering back out on shooters, like amazing at it. Like like one of the 3 or 4 best wings in the league at it. And that is such an important skill in a Tibbs defense when you're guarding the weak side corner 3-point shooter. And you just have to take away the paint first and still be able to close out on that shooter. It's so important. And he is unfreaking believable at it. He's very good at guarding the ball. He can guard smalls. He can guard bigs. He can guard big wings. He can guard small wings. He's a great secondary ball handler. He doesn't play with an ego. Like, he's hyper efficient. Like, I think Paul George is awesome.
The Paul George fit is obvious.
I just think Paul George is a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, there are going to be concerns with anyone. Like, that's why they're being traded. You know, like, there are going to be concerns with basically anyone. It's just like,
even Zach LaVine played 77 games last year. I know he had a
no, I don't
surgery
mean
thing,
health
but
concerns. I mean concerns.
But that's the thing, though. The Paul George concern is an availability concern.
I know that, but what I'm saying is you can get the perfect basketball fit. And if you get the one time where he's just healthy for the spring, like,
Okay.
you are in the conversation, you know? Like, if you get Zach LaVine, you've got basketball concerns.
Right.
Now it's like, he could be healthy all you want, but you're not in the conversation, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's a scenario where Paul George plays 52 games in the regular season, but he comes back in the middle of March and he's good to go. And you can go on this awesome playoff run.
Yeah. It's
with
the Kawhi
an amazing
Toronto
player.
The Kawhi Toronto path where
Exactly.
You not say screw the regular season, but you more so prioritize it, which hopefully you'll be able to do, you know?
Yeah, totally. So like, I don't know. I think Paul George is awesome, but I also don't think Paul George is going to get traded.
Okay.
I really don't. So I don't think it's going to be Paul George. I think it's probably not going to be Cat. I think it's too soon for Embiid. I think it's too soon for Doncic.
LaVine, if you consider him a star.
I don't think they're going to shoot their wad on LaVine.
And then we'll make this a quicker answer, but do you have a Dame take? I think we're all.
I have a Dame take. I have a Dame take.
Go ahead.
The Dame to the Knicks stuff is insane.
I don't see a fit with the Knicks. Do you think he gets traded at all?
Oh, maybe he'll get traded, but I don't think it'll be the Knicks. I imagine it'll be Miami or Brooklyn if he gets traded.
Okay. That's the market, what the national conversation has seen to dictate to. Okay. I want you to brace yourself. This happens.
I mean, is my internet crapping out, by the way?
No, you're fine.
For you for a second.
No, you're fine. Apologies.
Okay, great.
I think showing up choppy, but
I think the Dame stuff to the Knicks is like, I feel like Knicks fans have been so conditioned to be like, the team's bad. If you can get a superstar, go get a superstar. It's like, no, they're good now. They're good. Right. Start acting like a good team. Don't forget, just because you see the big shiny name, that you have Jalen freaking Brunson. That dude's awesome.
You want to talk about basketball fit that doesn't exist, or questions of basketball fit? It's Dame next to Jalen Brunson.
If Dame and CJ McCollum was not working for you, I don't think Dame and Jalen Brunson is working for you. If you're trading for Dame just so you can trade away Jalen Brunson, to me, that's at best like a lot to give up for a relatively marginal upgrade. And I honestly think there's a world. Dame is coming up on his age 33, 34, 35 seasons. I really think there's a world where Jalen Brunson in his age 27, 28, 29 season is better on the aggregate than Dame in his age 33, 34, 35 seasons. Even though I think of Dame as a player, the same thing that everybody else does. Like, would have been, should have been, if he played more than 58 games, if the Blazers hadn't shut him down, should have been, first or second team All NBA last year.
Just last thing on Dame, because you included him in your trade proposal ideas when you poached questions.
Well, they weren't my ideas,
but like you answered when people sent in trade proposals to you, and you answered them in a recent mailbag from Twitter. Mm-hmm. Did you get a lot of mailbag questions about Dame? Was there a lot of trade proposals?
I don't know. I got 171 trade proposals.
Okay. I should know because you said Knicks fans.
Yeah.
I actually think the majority of the Knicks fans I've interacted with have been like, we're good. Like the basketball.
Maybe I'm just judging off of my insane friend Raph, who keeps wanting them to get every.
Hi, Raph. By the way,
who's definitely going to listen to this because he's obsessed with your podcast.
Thank you, Raph.
And
the only other one I've heard is Stephen A. Smith, and we don't associate with him, so just throwing that out there.
And keeps suggesting to me that they get every small point guard on the market, and I'm like, Raph, stop.
It's
just
the
like
opposite of Mike Woodson, where
normally
like the Knicks are the lead, the East is big. No, now we're going all small in our lineup.
I'm like, normally you're such a homer. Like, be a homer.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Brunson's awesome. Start acting like Jalen Brunson's awesome. You can be a homer on this one. Why are you finally, when you have an opportunity to be one, not being one? So maybe I'm just reacting to Raph. Maybe that's all it is.
Shout out to Fred's friend Raph. So I've been bracing you for a very generous super chat, and this happens every now and then, but we just want to specifically say thank you to Dom Cappuccini. Go ahead, Fred.
Oh, wow. It's very generous. From Dom Cappuccini. Hey, Fred, thanks for taking over for John while he's at his cabin. What is your read on the DiVincenzo possibility? And if it happens, do you agree with John's domino trade theory pre or post DVT signing to make sense of roster construction? What was John's?
So I got to be totally transparent. Apparently, John had a theory today on the KFS lunch break that he hosted. APJP produced it because I'm in the midst of wedding planning, as Robert Cross mentioned. So I have not listened to it. So if you just want to say your thought that basically a domino effect will happen, that if the Knicks, I think what I gather from my conversations with John is that if the Knicks are interested in DiVincenzo, it's mostly the domino effect of the reason they will be is because they will have consolidated first and then signed him.
Yeah. No, I mean, I if that's what it is, then yes, I agree. I think that's what it is. And I kind of touched on this earlier, where if and when Josh Hart comes back, whether it's when he picks up his player option or because he re-signs in free agency, which it wouldn't surprise me if that was a quick re-signing if he declines the player option tomorrow. They're going to have all 9 guys who were in their rotation under contract. And you can't just bring in a guy for the mid-level who would command 20 plus minutes a night and inject him into that lineup without him taking minutes from somebody else. I don't see a world where he just takes all of Obi's minutes and Obi just sits on the bench getting DNPs. That would make no sense. I think it's in the cards for them to just like trade Obi into space or into a trade exception for a draft pick. I think that wouldn't shock me if something like that happened. I think there could be a trade where maybe they use Fournier's expiring to acquire somebody. And in that trade, they include another rotation guy and they give out, $6 million more than they're taking back in the deal, and then that's how they let up some money and they let up some minutes. But I agree. I mean, the thing that I wonder about DiVincenzo, I never really watched the Knicks this year. And to be clear, I think DiVincenzo is a good player. He had a really good year for Golden State last year, especially second half of the season. He caught fire with his jumper, shot 40 from 3 on the year. He plays really hard defensively. He has a ton of energy. He's good in passing lanes. Like he's good. He's a good player. He's a good role player, and he deserves a good portion of the mid-level exception. That's what his market should be. I just never watched the Knicks last year and thought, if only they had one more 6'4" guard. I just, if the move is dump Obi into space for a pick to clear up minutes and sign DiVincenzo, first of all, that's only freeing up like 15, 16 minutes if you're dumping Obi. He's taking more minutes from someone, whether that's Grimes, whether that's Quickley, whether that's Barrett. He's taking minutes from somebody. And you kind of just have a roster of a ton of guards and a ton of bigs without like without really any like hyper athletic wings at all. And that was what I watched last year. And I was like, they could really use a hyper athletic wing. And I know those guys are hard to find, but to me, part of their problem defensively was that they didn't have all of their best perimeter defenders were 6'4" or smaller, or 6'5" or smaller. Like it was Josh Hart, it was Immanuel Quickley, it was Miles McBride, it was Quentin Grimes. They were all 6'5" or all smaller. And so if you're going up against the big wing, they just didn't have, like, they had guys who could do it. You know, they would put Grimes on Pascal Siakam and they would put Hart on anybody, but they're just not going to have that guy who's the ideal sort of guy. And I always thought someone who would be the ideal sort of guy would be that, but like that guy's also not really out there. I mean, Torrey Craig is the closest thing to them. But I would guess that Torrey Craig's going to go back to Phoenix because I think Phoenix is smart. They'll intentionally overpay Torrey Craig, which is an insane that the NBA is going to work like that. But they would be advantaged by intentionally overpaying Torrey Craig because they essentially can't trade him if they don't. So I guess that's how you end up with DiVincenzo. But quite honestly, if I'm the Knicks, I'm not trying to hard cap myself this summer. I'm not, especially when like the CBA just came out today. It's 676 pages and teams have 48 hours to learn it. And like they got a little, you know, every time I tweet out or something that they haven't gotten the CBA yet, people hit me up and they're like, you know, people tweet at me and say things like, oh, you know, they must be getting keyed in on stuff as it goes along. And they weren't. People who work in salary cap management were losing their minds. They've been so stressed out. Like I spoke to multiple people who work in salary cap management for teams today in different teams, and everyone's just losing their minds. I would not hamstring myself. I would not be hard capping myself. And if you give out the MLE, you're hard capping yourself. And I would rather, if I were the Knicks, have Hart opt out and just sign him to a declining contract so his number is going down moving forward. You front load the contract. They don't just have to use the mid-level, by the way. They have the biannual. They could sign somebody for the biannual. And then you try to maybe get better with a trade. I just think that would be a little bit more prudent than using up your biggest resource on someone who's like somewhat redundant. Like if you think that Grimes is going to make a leap, and if you think that RJ is going to at least remain the same, and that Quickley is going to continue to get better, like, and you're re-signing Hart, it's just like, where are the minutes coming from? Like, I just envision a world where it's like Grimes gets off to a slow start in the season. Now all of a sudden Quentin Grimes is buried and you're playing Dante DiVincenzo. It's like, that doesn't seem like the best road for you. I don't think the upside of DiVincenzo getting more minutes over Grimes is worth the lack of flexibility that you get from using the MLE. So while I like DiVincenzo as a player, and I think he was really good for the Warriors last year, and I think he's definitely worth that salary, I don't think it's worth all of the cap craziness and the inflexibility that it could bring. Nor do I think it's worth it for the Knicks to potentially end up blocking one of their guys. But I don't know. I mean, maybe the reason that we're hearing the DiVincenzo noise is because a Quickley move is on the way, or a Grimes move is on the way, or something. And maybe that ends up happening around July 1st, and then we see him come in. And if that's the case, my opinion could very well completely flip. But assuming stuff stays about as is, or if it's like Obi is the guy out, I'm just not, I don't think it's like a terrible move or a backbreaking move. It just like seems to me a little unnecessary. I guess a little superfluous is the best way to put it.
Well said. And thank you, Dom, for the generous contribution. So we do this often at Knicks Film School. Specifically, John and I do this often, where we have our production meetings on air. And And I told Fred beforehand that we'd hard cap him at 90 minutes. And there's still several super chats from loyal patrons that want to ask you a question or wish you very well and a sincere.
Yeah,
thanks.
let's do them. Why don't we say because we've been on for an hour and a half. Why don't we say you have it's 9:33 on my computer right now.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we say you have until 9:36 to send in a super chat?
Sure.
And I'll do all the ones that come in before 9:36. Is that doable? Is that fair? Is that
I don't
a fair
know.
system?
I'm going to say this. There's no way you'll be able to answer all of them by 9:36. So that's why.
No. I'm not saying I'm out at 9:36.
Okay.
I'm just saying if I keep talking and we stay on, then we're going to roll in at 9:45.
Right.
9:55 and so on.
I will selectively choose. You have until, let's see, you've now created an urgency where a rush of super chats may come in. But maybe that's good for business. This is literally what retail does, is they say, like, you have until like end of the weekend for taking advantage.
You have until
of
9:36.
Meanwhile, the same sale is going to be up next weekend.
I'll answer all the super chats that come in before 9:36.
Okay, we'll start here.
From Jonathan Macri.
Yes.
If Mark Berman were an NBA contract, how would his valuation change under the new CBA rules? Toxic, neutral, or value? I assume he means if Mark Berman were on an NBA contract, but like the O button on his keyboard isn't working in the woods. I assume that's what he means.
I actually do think he means like if you were to compare NBA beat
Berman
writers
to a contract, not to a player on a contract.
Is he a contract? Is he Julius last summer? Is he Jalen Brunson on a bargain? You know,
I mean, it's tough because Julius or Berman right now is like what Melo was 3 weeks ago. You know, like he hadn't announced his retirement yet. I mean, I guess Berman announced his retirement, but he's still like tweeting about the Knicks. You know, like he announced his retirement, but he's in Florida tweeting about the Knicks. So I would say it's just kind of like a Melo situation where he's like, you know, maybe he like maybe what's the equivalent? I don't know. You know what it is? It's unaffected because he is writing for the Palm Beach Post. Mm-hmm. So I would say it's like when Dwight Howard went and played in Thailand.
So it's an NBA player that hasn't announced his NBA retirement, but is okay.
No,
so
but he's playing overseas. But he's playing overseas. It's like
Florida's a different country, so I agree with that example.
Right. It's like Dwight Howard going and playing. He's in Thailand, right? Or the Philippines?
Yes, Taiwan. Yes. Thank you, Chris Persianen, who hit us up in the chat. All right, next up. I'm gonna rapid fire him to a bit, and this is again. So this might actually reveal something behind the scenes for everybody. I usually take down the chat when I think John's answered the question, and it's an indication to John. Okay, you can end the next sentence, end it so we can get to the next one. That's what I'm gonna start doing that with you as well. Okay.
No one ever told me this.
This is a bad job by your producer, but no production meeting whatsoever. I apologize.
No, literally none. From Fargo Tufo. Who are your favorite sports writers to read who may not be on our radar? Any sport, any book recommendations, favorite season of The Wire. Favorite season of The Wire is season 3. I won't go into any detail because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who might be watching it. But I think season 3 is the best season. Favorite sport writers who might not be on your radar. So my favorite sports book my favorite like NBA author, basketball author ever is probably Jack McCallum. Amazing. What a legend. And my favorite basketball book ever might just be Dream Team by Jack McCallum. It's so good. It's the most incredible flex of reporting and storytelling. He is the most amazing reporter, the most amazing writer, the most amazing storyteller. And if you haven't read that book, I strongly recommend it. It's about the 92 Dream Team. And he was in Barcelona covering them for Sports Illustrated. And he wrote a book about his time covering them. And it's absolutely amazing. And the best, it's essentially just half of the book is basically just, you want to hear another hilarious Charles Barkley story? And it's laugh out loud funny. I mean, the Barkley quotes, the Barkley anecdotes are ridiculous. Like, it's called Dream Team, and it's just different chapter is a different thing about the Dream Team. If you're an NBA fan, gotta read it. It's amazing. Favorite sport writers to read. So growing up, my favorites were like Bill Simmons, Joel Sherman with New York Post. Still love those guys now, even though Simmons doesn't really write like he used to, obviously. But Joel Sherman still has his fastball and is incredible. I love reading him at the Post. I love Zach Lowe. At our place, I think we have a bunch of amazing people. James Edwards covers the Pistons for us, is incredible. Great feature writer, has the most creative story ideas. Tim Cato covers Dallas for us. Same thing. John Krasinski, not the actor, I think is probably the best beat reporter in the whole industry. He covers the Timberwolves for us. I think he's just the best NBA reporter in the industry. He's just the greatest. And has the same name as John Krasinski. So off the top of my head, those would be solid. And I love Jason Stark. Jason Stark writes with an enthusiasm about the most seemingly inconsequential crap. And he writes with an enthusiasm about it and is amazing. And growing up, by the way, my favorite reporter was David Aldridge, who I then got to work for in DC for 3 years, which was like a pinch me moment. And he's also just like the greatest dude ever. So I would have to put DA up there as well. I'm sure there are more when I'm not on the spot. Next one from Lunis Amarat. Per your tweet regarding the CBA details that came out today, it's kind of written in code. Are they that much different than what teams were expecting? The details that came out with the CBA today. Also, I'd ask you to reveal which team, but I know it's the Suns. I assume this is in reference to my tweet that I did tweet out that right after the CBA came out and got sent to the teams today, I got an unprompted text from a cap person from one team that just said "fuck my life." I started laughing and I texted the person if I could tweet it out, and got the yes, so I tweeted it. I will not say who it was who texted it. I will say the "fuck my life" was not about like "fuck my life, our team is screwed." It was "fuck my life, I have to become an expert on a 676-page legal document in 48 hours. That was the "fuck my life." And it's not that the details were different. So what the teams got in advance was like a term sheet. And I forget how many pages it was. 50. I have it in my phone. It's like 50 pages maybe, or maybe it's 80. It's either 50 or 80 pages. I can't remember which one. I always forget. And they got a term sheet basically summarizing what was in the CBA. But there were certain smaller things that teams just like didn't know what they were going to be. And so I have spoken to so many people who work in cap management over the last month or two who have told me, yeah, we called the league about this tiny little thing and they don't know. They couldn't really offer clarity on how it's going to be. So we're just waiting to see what it is. The other part of it is the term sheet is not like copied and pasted in the legal jargon that's actually in the document. And so you can get an estimation of what the intentions of the rules are. But being a good cap person is being such an expert in this ridiculously dense legal document that you're able to find intelligent ways to exploit it that other people aren't realizing yet. And they have no time to do that. I don't think you can do that in 48 hours. And if anybody can, then props to you. But that's kind of more what it is. Like, there's nothing that was in the term sheet that they're like, oh, we're just removing it from the CBA. But the term sheet was like what? Like 14% as long as the actual CBA. There's a whole lot of reading they have to do to make sure they know what's in there. And I was told by one cap person I spoke to today, being like, it's going to take forever for the league to process contracts in free agency because everybody is going to send in a contract that accidentally has something that's against the CBA in it because they just haven't realized yet that, the rule changed or this phrasing has to be slightly different or whatever. Next one from Fargo Tufo. Any noise on Taurean Prince, Jaden McDaniels, or another backup 4 to the Knicks?
Real quick, Fred. Fargo, Alex hit me up in the chat and said he wants to add Yuta Watanabe to this list.
Got it. I think Watanabe would be a really interesting guy for them. If his corner 3-point shooting from this past year, he shot like 50% on corner threes. If the corner 3-point shooting from this past year was real, it was a small sample, but if it was real, I think it's a good one. Plays really hard on defense too, and just plays with a lot of energy. They just declined the Taurean Prince option. Jaden McDaniels, I don't see happening. The Wolves really like him. And Taurean Prince, they just declined the team option. I don't think it's soon enough for me to hear any noise. I haven't heard anything on him either way. I think Watanabe would be interesting, and I think you could get him for pretty cheap. Like I think you could probably it's possible he's a minimum, and I think if not, he's probably somewhere in the biannual, the taxpayer mid-level range. I don't think he's going to cost you more than the taxpayer mid-level, and probably not even that. So I kind of like him as a value add. I like his game. From Ben Kim Gervey, is Deuce up for a bigger role this year? What does he work on to make that happen? Also, can Randles be reduced? Thanks, Fred. # one of us. # freaks. I think Deuce will have to earn the bigger role. I really, really, really doubt they enter next season with a plan of okay, Deuce McBride's going to be in the rotation. I don't think that's what it's going to be. It's going to be really hard for him to get into the rotation. What does he have to work on to make it happen? It's offensive stuff. It's working on making the proper passes within the offense. It's probably working on some quickness stuff, being able to blow by some defenders a little more. And obviously the most important thing is to work on the shooting. He's got to be able to knock down an open shot. And that's first and foremost the most important thing for him. If he can knock down shots, he can find a way to crack the rotation. But it's really hard to have a guy in your rotation playing legitimate minutes every night who is capable of being as cold as he is at certain times. So I think ultimately that's kind of what it has to come down to. Next one from Jessica Elsner. Fred, you are loved by Knicks fans. I subscribed long ago and you are fantastic. What have you learned about Knicks fans so far in your time here? Well, thank you, Jessica. That's very nice. What have I learned about Knicks fans? To be honest, I don't know. I'm from New York, and I'm extremely close with all of my childhood friends, and all of my childhood friends are Knicks fans. So I wouldn't really say I've learned anything about Knicks fans during the time. I actually didn't grow up a Knicks fan, but I grew up in New York around Knicks fans all the time, and I'm in group chats. Yeah, you didn't know, Andrew? I didn't grow up a Knicks fan.
I did know you didn't grow up a Knicks fan. Can I follow up and maybe you'll reveal something? What did you grow up as?
Clippers fan.
You're a Clippers fan. How did that happen?
Yeah. Because I loved playing with Eric Piatkowski and Kobe Bryant NBA Courtside 98.
That's a great video game, by the way. Yes.
On N64.
N64. Yep.
Yeah, great game. And I thought, man, this team must be awesome.
Okay.
So I became a Clippers fan. And my first full year as a Clippers fan was the strike season. And they went 9-41. And then once I got old enough, I found out that I had chosen a super racist owner. But at least I got some horrible teams to root for. And then I started covering the league right when they got good. And I went through all that torture for absolutely no payoff.
Literally none whatsoever. Yeah.
None. I mean, I was I was in college when they drafted Blake Griffin and stuff. So I got some of that, but yeah,
Okay.
No payoff. The 05-06 season was fun. The great part of my job is like every once in a while I have like I never get starstruck anymore. There's no player that could ever make me starstruck. I look at every player as just like a person who I work with, is either a colleague or a client of mine, and that's it. You know, it's just how I look at every player. But the older guys who I grew up with, it's kind of hard not to, you know, like I interviewed Hakeem Olajuwon one time, and the whole time I was like, holy shit, it's Hakeem. This is insane, you know? And one thing that I will say is, you know, Elton Brand is the GM of the Sixers now, and he was my favorite player when I was growing up. He was a really underrated player. He was awesome. And the first time I met Elton Brand, and he was the GM of the Sixers, and we just talked about that 05-06 Clippers team, which was the only good Clippers team from my childhood. They won 47 games. They beat the Nuggets in the first round of the playoffs, and they lost in 7 to Phoenix in the second round. They came 1 win away from their first ever conference finals. And just talking to Elton Brand about the 05-06, we just talked about the 05-06 Clippers for like, he's a super nice guy. We talked for like 30 minutes about the 05-06 Clippers. And at one point I said to him, I was like, man, like 12-year-old me would be losing his mind right now. Like losing his mind. So sometimes I'm like, this job's fun.
Yeah.
This job gets you to do the fun stuff.
Before I get to the next super chat, better N64 sports game, NBA courtside or Ken Griffey Jr. baseball? Ken
Griffey.
Okay. I might have ended the chat. I might have ended the stream live if you didn't say that answer.
No, Ken Griffey.
Yes.
Ken Griffey for sure. Ken Griffey is the second best N64 game ever, any genre.
Behind?
Mario Kart's number 1.
I've definitely played Ken Griffey more than that. I thought you were going to go GoldenEye, because that's the game I played the most.
GoldenEye was a great game.
Yes.
I mean, Mario Kart's just...
Mario Kart I also played in college, so I think that it aged better than any of these other games. So
I played Ken Griffey after college.
Well, I mean, I don't think I've played it since high school, but I also I like when you're broken in college and the dorm has an N64, it's like, all right, we're doing a Mario Kart tournament. Who's in, you know?
I mean, I still, whenever I see an umpire give like an emphatic safe call when I'm watching a baseball game, every once in a while, I'll still say to myself, he's in there. That's what the umps used to say when they were safe on a close call. Yeah. They wouldn't say he's in. They wouldn't say he's in there. It was like, he's in there.
He had there was an emphatic out every time there was an out. Yes. All right. Next up.
From Soul Squad. What if New Orleans proposed Zion for Julius straight up with the Knicks saying no? Well, first of all, New Orleans wouldn't do that. And second of all, no. I don't think the Knicks would say no. I mean, how could you say no to that? Like, I know Zion doesn't play, but when Zion plays, he's MVP caliber good. I look, I guess I'm just projecting my own opinions on it. If I'm running the Knicks and the Pelicans call me up, say, here's a 22-year-old who's been hurt a ton, but also is already an MVP caliber player. And if we can figure out a way to get his body straight, here's your MVP caliber player. And you'll give up Julius Randle. I mean, I'd do that for sure. You have to. Another one from Lunas Amarat. Thoughts on Donovan's 2024 summer? Any gossip? I assume you mean Donovan Mitchell, and no gossip. Donovan Mitchell seems to just be enjoying the beautiful weather, as he said in his tweet. I haven't heard any Donovan Mitchell noise. I know Brian Windhorst is locked into Cleveland and did the windy thing of being very what's the way to put it, Andrew? Being very cryptic.
Cryptic is the way. Yes.
Being cryptic. I know something, but I can't say what it is. And no one does that better than Wendy, to the point that there are GIFs of it. Nobody else, no other reporter has GIFs of being cryptic. And Wendy has GIFs, he has memes, he has everything. So I know he did that. I honestly don't don't know what the reference is, but I also think that Wendy's like an awesome reporter and is extremely locked in. So I'm sure is referring to something, but I have not heard any Donovan Mitchell noise. And I imagine the Cavs will want to go forward with this core, which, by the way, is like really young. Like Garland is really young and Mobley's really young and Allen is still like the earliest part of his prime and Mitchell's still the earliest part of his prime. Like, I think that team's getting better. I really do. So from Fritz Alcindor Jr., Orlando Magic youth poachable, Suggs or Wagner? Suggs might be because he's struggled so much. I don't know if I would be dying to poach Suggs. Wagner, no. No way. No way. Wagner's awesome. Franz Wagner is so good. Franz Wagner is so good. I think Franz Wagner has a legit chance to be the best player from his draft class. Franz Wagner is so good. Like, they have something with him and Paolo Banchero. Like, they really have something. I like the Magic's young core. I think they have some quality guys. They have a chance to be competitive because Banchero is going to be really good and Wagner is going to be really good. And right there, like, that is a quality core. I cannot imagine there is a way to just like, I mean, I'm going off your verb. You say poach. Like, I don't know. If you offer the world for Franz Wagner, maybe the Magic do it because you offer them the world. But there is not a way to poach Franz Wagner. No way.
We're getting a lot of I loved that game in the chat, by the way. The Ken Griffey Jr. baseball.
It was a great game.
It was an outstanding game. And like
so was Ken Griffey Jr. Slugfest. The following
I never
year.
played it. I only played
just as
baseball. Good. Yeah. Got to be honest, the way I evaluate baseball players today still goes by the size of your hitter circle that they used. I'd be like, oh yeah, Pete Alonso's got a hitter circle that's huge, but you know, Jeff McNeil's is a little bit smaller. Is the middle
my
one,
brother,
you know?
My brother and I have had a running joke for 25 years that whenever we're doing some menial task, we'll try to do it in Derek Jeter's batting stance from Ken Griffey Jr. baseball. So like,
oh, you're getting a visual joke. Yes. Here. So those who can't see, Fred's arms are above his head like this. Yes.
No, so much higher. Arms are completely straight.
Completely extended. Yes.
It's almost like if a golf backswing were elevated all the way over your head, like you'll throw out your shoulder doing it. So like we'll just have an inside joke where I'll be like, hey, can you pass me the salt? And then I'll get up and I'll do the stance and I'll have to say, hey, who am I? And you'll be like, you're Derek Jeter receiving the salt. And then I'll have to pass it into the batting stance. So yeah, I mean, that's an iconic game when you're referencing it. First of all, that's an iconic game when you're referencing it 25 years later. Second of all, my brother and I are extremely stupid people. I think that story confirms both of those things.
I've got friends that they're two of them specifically are the giant Met fans in my bridal party that we used to play games like we were waiting around in practice for like coach to show up about like we'd guess the batting stance and like you imitate Sammy Sosa and it requires a hop afterwards and David Ortiz and Barry Bonds. Yeah, the Ken Griffey Jr. baseball, like half the game everybody was Manny Machado's batting stance now, you know, but like Ken Griffey was the only one with a specific like to hit just tailored to him batting stance. You were like scratched an itch bringing up N64 games and Ken Griffey Jr. baseball.
It was a great game.
Two more, Fred.
All right. From Abraham Onafad, better Knicks fit, BI or Kuzma? I'm thinking Brandon Ingram, just the superior player, superior passer. Kuzma's actually really improved as a passer, but Ingram can like really run your offense. He really can. Kuzma can get really hot, but he's not an elite shooter. He's not. He's a solid defender, but he can shoot you out of games too. Ingram is not exactly a modicum of like hyper efficiency or anything like that. I just really like his game. He has such a smooth game. I think he'd be good for them inside the arc. I think he'd be solid enough for them outside the arc. He can space in the corners. He's not a gunner. He makes the right basketball play. I guess that's the big thing. Like, I think Kuzma, like the Kings being into Kuzma makes a lot of sense to me. You know, like he'd be good. That's like a gunner offense. He'd be good in a gunner offense that they just want you shooting as much as possible, and he would help them defensively. Like he's a good defender. Props to him. Like he was a bad defender when he first came in the league, and he is a good defender now. Like he guards really hard. He's physical. He's got good footwork. He takes a lot of pride in taking on difficult matchups, plays super hard. Like he obviously cares about it a lot. He has his priorities right. He's a good player. He's going to get massively paid. He deserves to get massively paid. I think Ingram is the superior player, and I think he would be better for them. Ingram, crazy, one of the most underrated passers in the league. Really good passer. From Dom Cappuccini. You say you prefer hard opt-out, no mid-level, essentially run it back. I'm okay with that. What does your gut say on what happens? Run it back or a small or big splash? My gut says run it back with slight renovations on the fringes. I don't think they're going into next year with the same 9 guys in their rotation. I don't. Someone, if not multiple people, are going to be out. But I think Brunson will be there. I think Randall will be there. And I think most of their rotation guys will be there. I do, however, think that if something is going to prove me wrong, it will be that they finally made the trade for the big star. And a bunch of guys left, or they in the trade, or they had to then renovate the roster around that star to make sure they could optimize that star along with Brunson and whomever else is still there, probably Randall. So I think the most likely scenario, even though we never know when a star is becoming available, you never know, you never know when Kevin Durant's just going to be like, I want out on the first day of free agency. People didn't see that coming. They just didn't. And if you say you saw it coming from the outside, I don't know. I guess you're smarter than everybody else in the league, because that caught the whole league by surprise. And you never know when it's coming. But as of now, I can't anticipate who is the guy who's worth it. So I would say the most likely scenario is, run it back with some changes on the fringes. And that's it. And then you maintain your flexibility and you move forward. I think they will use the MLE. I do think they will use the MLE. I don't know if I would. I don't think it's like stupid to use it or anything like that. Like, it's not crazy. I just, I would not care as much about the present.
One last question for you then, because a lot of our assumptions with them using the MLE is that it'd be to replace someone that's currently in the rotation. They started with a 10-man rotation last year. Is that completely off the table that they would go to a 10-man?
I'm not going to say it's completely off the table, but I can tell you that Tibbs prefers a 9-man.
A 9-man.
Like, okay. Ideally, he's going with a 9-man. And okay, if you get somebody else and you're going to a 10-man, you're cutting into minutes even more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't really envision how the 10-man would work.
I don't either. I think if my thought, honestly, for a 10-man is if you were to trade Obi and not mostly get pick compensation back, which I know a lot of people would, blow a gasket if that happened. And whoever they say they sign DiVincenzo, and for some, I'm just creating a scenario here where RJ and Hart are now your backup force, and they just kind of split it that way. And then Deuce finds his way into the rotation playing 8-9 minutes, and it's really just like spot up duty more than anything else. They were really successful with a 10-man 3 years ago. So I think they if they find it effective, could they pursue it that way?
Yes, for sure. If Deuce shows up and they're like, damn, Deuce got good, we got to play him, I think they will amend that. I think Tibbs is a huge Deuce guy. Okay. So I just said huge Deuce
I
guy.
heard it too. Glad we had Fred Katz here to talk about Tibbs and his huge douche.
Huge deuce guy. Okay.
Huge deuce guy. Yes.
I think Tibbs really values McBride as a player.
Yes. Miles McBride.
And
Miles
Yes. McBride, I know him by no other name.
Indeed.
I mean, Obi Toppin calls Miles McBride Dookie.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm glad you shared.
And I was like, are you calling him Dookie because of the reason that I think? He said, yeah. What's his name? I said Deuce. And he goes, ha, ha, and then he runs out of the locker room. So yeah, he calls him Dookie. So it could be worse. They'll do that. I just don't think like the design going in will be, we're going to do this for a 10-man. I think the preference is the 9-man. But if it turns out you have 10 players who are worthy of being in the rotation, it's a pretty fantastic problem for any team to have. So I'm sure they'd figure it out from there. And there are always injuries and that kind of stuff. And I think Tibbs would be somewhat amenable on that too.
And with that, we are wrapping up this marathon live stream. Thank you to Fred Katz of The Athletic. Do you want to read the closing banner?
Yes. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's live stream. Wait,
actually, read this one.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Oh no, wait, I did that wrong anyway. I thought I put your name in the other one, not the off my game tonight. I must be a Mets fan. Go ahead.
My goodness. Okay. You good to go?
Now we're good. You
still recovering from that Steve Cohen press conference?
Pick a Mets thing, and I'm still recovering from it right now. Like I had I told everybody a couple weeks ago that I got this hat from my father-in-law who passed away, and so I'm gonna wear it in tribute. And I gotta say, since then, the Mets have been made it really hard to keep supporting them. So I honor him with this hat, but man, are they not making it easy to honor them in any way, shape, or form right now?
No, I think he
might away from losing again too. Yeah,
he might understand.
He's looking down.
He might understand.
Maybe he's responsible for it.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God, the starting pitching is just so much worse than I thought, and it's really
there you go.
Disastrous. All right. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's. This is, by the way, totally genuine. I'm not reading off a prompter at all. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's live stream. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and like/share this video. Also, one more reminder: if you haven't yet, please read Fred's work. Oh, I'm Fred. You didn't put it for my work. You can say my work. You have Fred's work. Please read Fred's work, my work, I'm Fred, by subscribing to The Athletic. A special promotion is running now. It's $1 a month. That's true. You can go to any link to any of my stories and you click on that and you go and you subscribe. It's $1 a month for 12 months. It's like, the only problem is you got to take out your credit card information. And if you have it saved into your computer, you're good to go. Can I add to it really quick?
Yeah, of course.
I have 3 stories up already this week. I had a story Monday, evaluating fans' trade proposals, which is honestly one of my favorite pieces to write. And I do it every year leading into the offseason and every year leading into the trade deadline. And it's one of my favorite pieces to write. I love when I get some of the trades and they're just insane. And actually, my aforementioned friend Raf sent 5 trades in and I didn't use any of them. And then he texted me about not using any of the trades. Jeez. Although one of them I used, I was like intrigued with, but I didn't know what to do with it because it was Obi for Jonathan Kuminga. And I was like Obi on Golden State is actually kind of interesting. But I have no idea what to write about this, so I'm not doing it.
So I actually hit Benji up the other night that that specific trade, Obi for Kuminga, and I
probably
think
Raf.
The thought was the same problem exists. It's Kuminga not getting enough playing time behind, guys that will be prioritized by the head coach.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can check. I had that story up, evaluating fans' trade ideas. And it was basically just use that as a vehicle to discuss Dame and Paul George and Miles Turner and all these other guys.
He answers about Zion and Cat and even
Zion and Cat.
Bojan Bogdanovic.
Corey Kispert. Yeah, I liked the Bojan Bogdanovic trade in there for what it's worth. That made a lot of sense. And it was Bogdanovich basically for Obi Fournier in a first. And I was like, that's interesting. He would help them. And then that would make sense for Detroit too. And then on Tuesday, I had a story up about something. I don't remember what, but it was something Knicks. 10 players that could go after for the mid-level exception.
MLE poem.
Yes, exactly. I wrote a poem about the MLE. And then for this morning, I had a very dense explainer for the CBA nerds, really, just about like why Josh Hart, the decision he makes on his player option is so important. And I touched on it a little bit now and how that would change the Knicks long-term versus short-term plans. And at some point on Thursday, I will have like my mega free agency Knicks preview going up as well. So look out for that. It's going up at some point on Thursday. Again, click on any link to any of my stories. I'm right there. If you're not a subscriber, there's an offer to sign up for The Athletic. It's not just a subscription for my articles. It's all of The Athletic. $1 a month for 12 months.
There you go. Now, 2 quick things before I let you go. First of all,
Yes.
one more super chat, 30 seconds or less. This is from Sam Garcia's dad. I'll read it out. Is it possible that Leon is too frugal to make a star trade? He doesn't seem to want to overpay. Does that keep us from acquiring a star other than maybe Giannis, a super duper star?
Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No.
Okay. Good answer. And then the second thing is what I usually tell people when I do the pregame pods, specifically Knicks fans, support the people that make time for us. So if you are not subscribed to The Athletic, please go to any of Fred's articles or just go to theathletic.com and find Fred Katz.
No, go to my articles.
Specifically because okay, so here's what I'll do. If you're watching this, it's in the chat right now, but I will put it in the description of this video. If you're listening to this episode and you're listening us later on, I will have the link to his most recent articles so you can read them. The OB article, the IQ extension article I thought was really good when you polled the league to see what they would say is market value for Immanuel Quickley. The MLE conversation in which you began with a poem by MLE Dickinson. And then the hypothetical trades that were submitted by a bunch of people, I thought was really, really good and fun for Knicks Twitter as well. So any one of those articles, if you want to read it and click on it and support Fred, sign up via those links. Fred, thank you so much for joining us tonight, my friend.
Thank you for having me. This was a blast. And I appreciated Robert Cross coming on and burning me too. That was worthwhile.
I think he burned Chris more than he burned you. Poor guy. Thank you everybody for tuning
Chris
in.
Catching strays.
Yes, thank you everybody for tuning in. Catch Fred on this podcast in the not too distant future. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of KFS Lunch Break. Then tomorrow night, you got the Casuals live here on YouTube. So you'll be able to submit your questions for them for a Thursday night edition of Casual Friday. Until then, thank you for watching. And then eventually, thank you for listening. We will speak with you soon. Peace.